Hello there. Brexiteers, be on your guard. Remember the old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, then it might well be too good to be true. Please don't forget to give the YouTube algorithm a good kickstart by giving this video a like. Now to business. The news today regards something I touched on yesterday, and that is the Tory plan to put a clause in the Withdrawal Agreement Bill to be put in front of Parliament this Friday that will somehow supposedly make it illegal for Parliament to extend the Brexit transition phase beyond the 31st of December 2020. That all sounds fine and dandy. But as a dedicated Brexiteer, I do have some serious questions and concerns here. So a quick recap. There are three main concepts. The first is the Withdrawal Agreement Treaty, which is the stepping stone to finally leaving the EU with a deal on the 31st of December 2020. Second is the Withdrawal Agreement Bill that has to be passed through both Houses of Parliament to become statute law so that the Withdrawal Agreement Treaty can be ratified and become international law. If the Withdrawal Agreement Bill is not passed by Parliament, then we leave without a deal on the 31st of January. Unless we have yet another Article 50 extension, of course. The third is the political declaration, which is just a guide to the sort of deal that the EU and UK eventually want to agree between them. So under current UK and EU law, the UK will leave the EU on the 31st of January 2020, either with no deal or under a new treaty, the Withdrawal Agreement Treaty, that puts in place a transition period that runs until the 31st of December 2020 and keeps us under EU control while we thrash out a new future relationship using the political declaration as a guide. Now the PM and his team have kept droning on about there being no extension to the process of the UK leaving the transition period on the 31st of December 2020, even if we have to leave the transition phase without a deal. But built into the Withdrawal Agreement Treaty is the option for the transition phase to be extended for one time only, either for a 1 year or a 2-year period. But Boris has said he won't allow this, and to press this point home, we've been told that the Withdrawal Agreement Bill will contain a clause making it illegal for Parliament to extend that transition period. Now my first point here is don't allow yourself to be misled. The option to extend the transition phase will be written into international law via the Withdrawal Agreement Treaty. The clause to prevent that extension option being used by the UK Parliament will be written into UK domestic law only. And we all know what happens when international and UK law collide, especially where the UK Supreme Court and others are concerned with regard to Brexit, don't we? So let's dig a little bit deeper, shall we? Now remember that I'm not a qualified lawyer, I'm just using what I've learnt thus far, as well as treating Boris Johnson's pronouncements with a bit of due scepticism, given his past arch-buffle-waffling on do or die just before he was forced to meekly send that Article 50 extension request letter prior to the 31st of October. But to get back on track. The Withdrawal Agreement Treaty, which is binding in international law, says at Article 126, Transition Period. There shall be a transition or implementation period which shall start on the date of entry into force of this agreement and end on the 31st of December 2020. But it also says at Article 132, Extension of the transition period. Notwithstanding Article 126, The Joint Committee may, before the 1st of July 2020, adopt a single decision extending the transition period for up to 1 or 2 years. Once the withdrawal agreement is ratified, that extension option is there in international law. Now, the Joint Committee that can decide on this will have representatives on it from both the UK and the EU, with the idea that the Joint Committee will supervise and facilitate the implementation and application of this agreement. And the Joint Committee shall meet at the request of the Union or the United Kingdom, and in any event shall meet at least once a year. And under the Withdrawal Agreement, the Joint Committee shall be responsible for the implementation and application of this agreement. I take that to mean that if either the EU Commission or the Boris Johnson UK Tory government asked for a meeting to discuss an extension to the transition phase before the 1st of July 2020, then the Joint Committee could well agree and adopt it. And the UK Parliament would not necessarily be involved now that Boris has his huge majority. In fact, even if there was a clause allowing Parliament to interfere in the process, it would be meaningless, as any vote would always now go the way the government wants it to go. The days of the 2017 to 2019 hung Parliament are over. So what I'm saying is that as far as I can see, Boris is using a pointless argument to pretend he's being tough. And further, Michael Gove was quizzed about this by Adam Bolton on Sky News. The presenter said, "And to put it into law, as we understand it, that there will be no extension of the implementation period beyond 2020. To which Mr. Gove replied, "Exactly, absolutely." And he went on to justify this by saying that both sides have committed themselves within the political declaration to coming to an agreement by the end of 2020. But he didn't, as far as I can see, mention the withdrawal agreement. Because from my reading of the non-binding political declaration, it contains aspirations that we will come to a deal by the end of 2020, but not a cast-iron commitment to do so. Remember, the political declaration is a guide that is written within the bounds of the Withdrawal Agreement Treaty that will be binding in international law. Now, what's going to happen if we get to June 2020 and the EU and our Rejoin the EU campaigners claim that not enough progress has been made to get a deal by the end of 2020? Will we end up with the EU asking to extend and the Joint Committee agreeing to it? And remember that the UK side can't just say no without good reason. We would be bound by international law to Article 5 of the agreement, which says, "The Union and the United Kingdom shall, in full mutual respect and good faith, assist each other in carrying out tasks which flow from this agreement. They shall take all appropriate measures, whether general or particular, to ensure fulfilment of the obligations arising from this agreement, and shall refrain from any measures which could jeopardise the attainment of the objectives of this agreement." So what would happen? My guess would be that in those circumstances we would extend that transition period. And there will also be the usual litigious suspects here in the UK observing these developments very closely. And another big point here is that if it was made totally illegal in UK law for anyone to agree to extend the transition period, then UK law would be at complete odds with the withdrawal agreement itself. That would therefore, in my book, make it impossible for the government to then ratify the Withdrawal Agreement Treaty without that extension option first being removed from it with the say-so of the EU27. That alone tells me that this pronouncement has no real teeth. Now, I may be wrong about all of this, but if I'm right, then all the Tories have done is make the removal from or inclusion into a bill of a clause that has no real meaning sound like a huge show of strength and determination. And in doing so may have opened themselves up to another embarrassment. Why, oh why do politicians do this? But of course they have to do this and then go and hope for the best, because they've made the promise that we'll be out by December the 31st of 2020, even with the knowledge that they might have to extend. Either that or Boris is concerned that his own MPs might start getting jumpy by mid-year if the EU is making noises about lack of progress, and he wants to make sure all their political teeth are drawn first, maybe. That is to say, that maybe at the end of the day he doesn't really trust his own MPs to stay the course, many of whom he probably knows relatively little about. Sounds like October the 31st all over again, doesn't it? But Boris only has to brazen it out for the 5 months between the 1st of February and the 1st of July, after which the extension clause becomes inoperable. Moving on, in case you missed it, the Remainers will be doubly glum tomorrow, as tomorrow is the day that the European Union is marking the 10th anniversary of the Lisbon Treaty. Yes, big celebrations all round, it seems. Well, maybe we Brexiteers can celebrate too, as that's the treaty that contains the Article 50 EU Get-Out clause. Although I'm sure there was a far easier way than this last nearly 4 years of upheaval. Anyway, what do you think? Please share and comment, and thank you for watching.